there's been a feeling with Cronulla that there's just that little bit of X factor that they're missing. Have they found it now in Adam Fanua-Blake?
Well, last year, they've been top 4 now for a couple of years, so they've been knocking around there. The teams that ran 3rd and 4th last year, the Roosters and the Sharks, were better than everybody else, other than the 2 top teams, Storm and Panthers. Now, Storm and Panthers played them in the finals and flogged both of them. So the difference between the top 2 and the next 2 was massive, and the difference between the next 2 and the rest was probably just as big. So they're in the top 4 mix at the moment. Conceded only 431 points. That's where you want to be if you're going to play finals football. You want to be in that low 400s, certainly under 500 points conceding. That's just how it works out at different times. Obviously, the big purchase for them has been Adam Fanua-Blake and the young half from Canberra, Peru. They've lost Royce Hunt, Tokomo and Jack Williams. So there hasn't been a great deal of change. So there's a lot of familiarity in their roster. They've spent some time together. Craig Fitzgibbon's been there for a couple of years now. The culture is well ingrained. They were very impressive in the trial on the weekend. They're going to Vegas, so we'll get a good look at them, in a couple of weeks' time when they're in Vegas, and then they've got to recover that, come back. But the Cronulla Sharks are easily a top 4 roster in this competition. Let's have a look at their NRL experience, which I imagine will rate pretty well.
Heaps, yeah.
Well, Cronulla, last year it was only 1,800. This year it's over 2,000. So they've picked up a couple of hundred games in NRL experience. That's what the fellas coming through. Good wingers, good centres, good halves. Nico Hynes and Braden Trindle, I think, are settling into quite the combination. Young Will Kennedy, Brayley at hooker. It's a very workman-like spine, good forward pack, good strike power out wide. Their wingers are outstanding.
If you're a Sharks fan, you listening to this, you're thinking, how are they going to take the next step?
Well, for them, it's about, they've got to re-establish themselves, obviously, and get back into the competition and be winning games week in, week out, which they don't seem to have a problem doing. And then last year, they had a couple of wins over the top sides in the middle of the season, but when it got finals time, they just couldn't match it with them. I think that's the next step. They can't just hop on one leg and make it to September, but it's about how they go next September. I think they'll be in the 8. I think they'll be in the 4, and whether or not they can make up the ground on Melbourne and Penrith to give us a different looking grand final. I think, they're a premiership chance. They're a genuine premiership chance. They've been knocking on the door now for a couple of years. They got the experience out of that. Whether it's good experience or bad experience remains to be seen, but there's certainly some learnings there. I think Fanua-Blake can be phenomenal for them, particularly with the forwards that they've got. It's just that little bit of leadership that they're probably looking for, and that he's such a good player
and skill.
Yeah, but he's such a good player, and off the back of them, Nico Hynes and Braden Trindle and Kennedy should be able to create a lot of opportunities. They're a premiership chance. There's no risk in the world. They're a premiership chance, and they'll be bouncing around the top 4 for most of the year.
Leave out all the stuff that the Nico talk that seems to be bouncing around him perennially. In the end, how much of this sits on his shoulders as the main playmaker in the club? Notwithstanding that, I think Braden Trindle showed last year that he's every bit as good.
Yeah, well, towards the back end there, I felt like Braden Trindle was actually playing half and Nico was playing a secondary role. There's a theory that Nico's probably a better fullback than a halfback. It's just his talent that puts him in the number 7 jersey. I think Nico's got really good ignoring the noise from the outside. I mean, he seems like, it might have worried him early on, but I don't know. I think he seems very settled in himself at the moment. He's creative. They're going to beat a lot of the sides pretty comfortably in games. Like, that's the thing. It's just how they match up against the good sides on the big days is what they've got to do. They've got to be able to beat. It's the key to winning a premiership. It's that last little 2 or 3%. You talk about on your best day. And my thing is, can we beat them on their best day? Can we beat Melbourne on their best day? Can we beat Penrith on their best day? That's the next step.
Sharks went down and beat Melbourne in Melbourne with half their team missing last year.
So everyone's relying on, Sharks on their day, Sharks on their best day. I look at it differently. All right, we need to get ourselves steeled so that we can beat them on their best day.
Yeah.
You know, if we get to the games and Penrith produce their best, or Melbourne can produce their best, or Roosters, or Manly, whoever it is, when we play our side and they produce their best, can we win? That's what Penrith and Melbourne have become great at, and that's what Penrith's been outstanding at. They beat everyone when everyone's at their best. Everyone's lifting to try and beat the Panthers. They still bat them away and beat them. You know, like on their best day, all these teams can probably make the 8 on their best day. On their best day, they can probably beat any team, right? But can they beat the top sides when the top sides are on their good day? Well, for a lot of them, the answer is no. And for the Sharks, that's the step they need to take. It's not just having their best day. They've got to deal with the opposition's best day, because that's what you get in the finals. You get there and you come up against a Penrith and a Melbourne. They're going to have their good day. You need to be able to beat them then. During the season, you might catch them off guard. You might catch them off week. They might have only had a 5-day turnaround. You know, it might be field might be wet, or players playing with injuries. You've got to beat them on their best day. That's the battle of winning premierships. It's the battle of origin. It's not about your best day. It's about beating them on their best day.